We just finished celebrating our nation's independence. However, politics has permeated everything. Will our country survive today's political climate? Welcome to another episode of Counterthought. Just wrapped up Independence Day, celebrating with family, friends, however you celebrated, maybe with a barbecue, hopefully fireworks, whether your own or whether you got together with a city event or something, in your town or your neighbors, what have you. Myself and my family, we went down to our complex's pool area, which backs up to a lake, and there are numerous houses also on that lake. And we were able to watch not only our own community's firework display, but also our neighbor's firework display, and blasting some patriotic music through the Bluetooth and just sitting there and enjoying our country. However, polls that came out this week, right after Independence Day, say that America's patriotism is waning. And it seems to be split across party lines. Republicans tend to be more patriotic than Democrats, and Democrats are less patriotic. And that's sad, because that is dwindling as time goes by. You can see the division over the past 8 to 10 years in this country, especially over the past 2, 3 to 4 years, just continue to grow. Politics is in everything. Politics is in our sports, which seem to be untouchable. It seemed to be left alone. Politics is all over social media. Politics is found in your movies and your TV shows. We recently had Top Gun come out, Top Gun Maverick, a big thrust of patriotism. But then you listen to the President of the United States and his Independence Day speech, and where was that rah-rah for our country? It was just kind of like, a ho-hum speech. Nothing really truly to celebrate. And when he did talk about, like our country's greatness, or talked about maybe some things right now that are going on that he doesn't consider to be too great for our country. And I can think we can agree that, things aren't as perfect as they could be. He was just general, not calling out anything specific for the good or the bad. Politics is even permeated in our businesses, even our banking. Our banking, yes, I said that correctly. Our banking. I heard this a story last week talking about a bank responded to one of their account holders' tweets to like their support desk or something like that, and the bank responded. They did not agree with what was said, and this was something political in nature, I believe. And the bank responded with, "Hey, well, if you feel that way, that is not in line with our values. So what we are going to do is we would ask you to close your account and take your money elsewhere." A bank telling you to take your money elsewhere. And then also our education system, that has been at the forefront over the past year to 2 years. The way that politics has just entrenched itself within our education system. We saw that during the pandemic. We saw, Randy Weingarten, who's the leader of one of the 2 largest teachers unions, say, "Oh yes, we want the students to be in the classroom. We want the students to be in the classroom, but also we want everything for our teachers." And then when they got everything, she continued to say, "Oh, well, we're not quite ready yet, but yes, we care about the children." And it was all politics. It seemed like a game to her. And then, of course, it's as politicians change and leadership changes within your local community, the education system, unfortunately, your school boards also change. And we've seen that fight really, the importance of it when it comes to our school board elections and local politics. As I said before, one of the things that was really revealed to me during this whole pandemic, and we've crossed the 2-year mark, was how important your local politics and your state politics are. All the federal politics gets the attention. You see stories, and you hear about stories, read about stories, whatever, news involving the president of the United States, the vice president of the United States, the State Department, you know, not much notoriety goes unless it's your local news for local and state. But based on our government, the way it is set up, power is given to the states, and that is where, that is why, I should say, especially here in Florida, located in Orlando, Governor Ron DeSantis was able to do things going against what, like the Biden administration wanted him to do, and run Florida as he best saw fit, along with the state legislature. So politics isn't everything. When I was growing up, I said right off the top, politics, sports. I was, or am, consumed with sports. Politics has taken a larger chunk of that pie since starting this podcast, and even going back to 2016. But my life growing up, I mentioned this in the Father's Day episode, was sports. I played sports. I attended sporting events. All of my memories with, well, not all, but most of my memories with my dad growing up were centered around sports, whether it was Florida Gator football games, maybe a couple of basketball games here and there, the YMCA, going to the youth football league, youth baseball, Babe Ruth baseball. Everything was sports. Watching broadcasts, watching the NFL on Sundays or other college football games on Saturdays as a kid, as an adult, as a college student, as a young professional, as a father, sports are a way for me to unwind, just kind of chill, mellow out, watch athletes do their thing, right? Not worried about what the president said earlier today, what was done last week, nothing like that. Sports was a way for everyone to come together. And then the patriotism that centered around sports, you got the national anthem. Some places also say the Pledge of Allegiance. If you're wearing a hat, you take your hat, you put your hand over your heart. If you serve, you maybe stand in salute during the national anthem. You even have flyovers, and to this day, you still have flyovers, which is great and all that. There is still a patriotism there. Some of it seems like forced because the leagues like the NFL or what have you, they do certain things that are like, oh, well, you're just going woke. You're placating to the minority because you don't want to, be chastised by those same individuals. You're running scared. And then the next week it's like, oh, well, it's Veterans Day weekend, so we're going to be all patriotic, But sports was just a way for everyone to come together. I never once had a thought when I was attending, a football game thinking, this new person over here at our tailgate, I wonder what his politics are. That never crossed my mind. It was, we're both fans, Florida Gators, right? Awesome. Baseball game, maybe up in Atlanta. Never once thought about the person next to me. Hey, I wonder what their politics are. But now these sports leagues, they have taken it upon themselves to be like, hey, you know what? We're going to chime in on this. We feel like you want to hear what we think. So we're going to weigh in on this. And the perfect example, one of the most recent examples, was the All-Star game that was supposed to be played in Atlanta last year. The Atlanta Braves. Hank Aaron passed away earlier in the year in 2021, and it was one of the ways to commemorate Hank Aaron. It was supposed to be part of that whole All-Star weekend celebration. And then Major League Baseball and Rob Manfred gets involved and says, hey, state of Georgia, we don't like this new voting law. So as punishment for that, we're going to take the All-Star game away from Atlanta. And they moved it to Denver, which has which has even stricter voting requirements that they were getting onto to Georgia for. I still haven't heard an apology from Major League Baseball. And then you have the NBA, they've going back to the summer of 2020, they were, and even through 2021, I believe, they had under the baseline for both ends of the court, some type of some type of slogan like, end racism or Black Lives Matter. And then the NBA saw that viewership, decreased. And Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, was like, yeah, well, next season we're not doing that. We're going to take that stuff off the court. And the NFL had things along the out of bounds lines in the back of the end zones and so on and so forth, similar things. But sports used to just be where you could go and you could hang out with, your 70, 80, 90,000 closest friends. It didn't matter what you believed about politics, but then politics has now just injected itself into sports, which used to be like a refuge, a way to escape your daily life. It was a place for enjoyment and celebration, but that's not really the case anymore. And it sucks, for lack of a better term, right? It sucks. Everyone, even athletes, the individual athletes, are wanting to speak their mind and use their platform. And one of the topics in which they talk about is politics or social justices or injustices, right? That did not used to be the case. And I am one who would prefer it to be that way today, that, it's not this shut up and dribble mentality. It's not that at all. It's, hey, you are an employee of this team. This team belongs to the NBA. So when you are on the job, when you are playing the game, play the game. You can use your platform off, but on the court, in the arena, under the umbrella of the NBA, let's keep politics out. Do things for your local community. Yeah, that's fine. Like, each team has things going on in their local community, outreach programs and so on. Fantastic. But when the lights are on and you're in the arena or you're on the field, you're in the ballpark, that's not what I want to see. I just want to watch the game, enjoy the spectacle, the entertainment value of these college and professional sporting events. But politics hasn't stopped there. It gets into businesses, and it's all over social media. You have corporations, going back to the All-Star Game example in Atlanta, Georgia. You had Coca-Cola and Delta, both of their, corporate offices are located there. That's where their corporate headquarters are. And they were sounding off as well. And there's like a method to this, which I'll get to in a second. And I think why these corporations are speaking up and speaking out and injecting themselves into the political fray. But your social media accounts, it used to be, I'm old enough to remember, right? I'm old enough to remember when Facebook first came out. I started high school summer 2004. Fall of 2004 is when I joined Facebook. At some point, I think maybe the 10-year anniversary or something like that, maybe the 5-year anniversary, Facebook came out with this, hey, you can get your number, basically the number user account that you had. And I was part of the first million on Facebook, maybe even lower than that. Because Facebook used to be, when it was first created, or maybe you don't know, depending on how old you are, but Facebook used to be that you had to have an email address, a school email address. And it first started out, it had to be like a 4-year school. And then I think they let community colleges join. And then eventually they opened it up to everyone who, had an email address. And that's when it just grew exponentially. But it used to be, limited to like the 4-year school. So, at ufl.edu, at whatever state school, whatever private school, .edu was like the domain they were basically looking for. But today, and I made this conscious decision with this podcast. I joined Instagram prior to this podcast. I knew that I was going to need to use Instagram to help grow this podcast. And when I first joined, I was using just my personal Instagram account. And some people, once they made a transition, if they're getting into, politics, whether it's through a podcast or something else, they just made a seamless transition and said, hey, I don't care what kind of pushback I get from friends. I'm going to take my personal account and I'm going to flip it and primarily use it for, whatever I'm doing regarding politics or cultural topics and all and the like. But for me, I decided to do a different route. I initially, tried to switch my personal account to politics, and I got this pushback from certain people, and I just didn't want to deal with that. So what did I do? I created my Counterthought CEO account. And that is like my personal podcast account, or my personal professional account is another way I refer to it. But that way everyone knows, hey, Politics CEO, this is me, Brian Kletter, Counterthought CEO. It's everything that's coming from that account is going to be like more personal takes, but under the umbrella of the podcast. And then I have obviously the Counterthought official account, and that is, where I post the things about all the new episodes and the Counterthought rundown and everything else, and certain lives. So I chose to not use my personal account for politics for this podcast, but some people don't, and other people who don't even really dabble in politics, or that's not their main thing, they'll use their accounts now to sound off about something that's going on regarding politics. So you can't escape it anymore on social media. You could just be scrolling through and be like, oh yeah, here's my friend. Oh look, they posted some pictures. Let me click on their account and see what they've been up to lately. Oh, politics take here. Oh, politics take there. And it's just dirtied up. It's muddied up social media, in my opinion. Like, I don't want to see that from personal accounts, but everyone has the right to say what they want within the limits of these social media platforms. And again, politics is in everything, so it seems like you cannot escape it. Everyone wants to, or a lot of people want to voice their opinion on what is going on in politics, in our society, and in culture. And then in TV and movies, that has been a very popular topic of late. More and more, or maybe now less and less, hopefully, fingers crossed, but there was a shift over the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, maybe more, where Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, Hollywood in general, the big studios were shifting or slanting their content, the plots of the movie, the characters within movies, characters within TV shows, plots of TV shows, to include more, lack of a better term, woke ideologies, woke stances, more things related to culture and society and politics. Even late night TV shows, those used to actually be funny. The host would start with a stand-up routine, and it was just about anything and everything. Everything was fair game. But now you have like the Colbert Show and Jimmy Kimmel, and theirs is all political. The Daily Show, the same. Jimmy Fallon is probably the one who puts his toe into political jokes the least, thankfully. But you saw this shift where, whether it was having characters that were LGBTQ or, more gay couples or what have you, everything was being slanted. You have different movies or TV shows that are all about like a social injustice or something like that. So it just seemed like a switch was flipped. And you have seen people, especially Disney, going head to head with Ron DeSantis here in Florida. You've seen people turn away from this most recent release of the Lightyear movie, right? You saw Top Gun Maverick already hit $1 billion, I believe, worldwide. And then Lightyear basically did like a faceplant. I think it only brought in about 50 million on its first weekend, which was well below expectations. And, there's the thought is that, well, maybe that's because there is this lesbian kiss somewhere in the movie. And also they decided to move away from Tim Allen, who is the iconic voice of Buzz Lightyear. And some people say, or a lot of people believe, that is because, he's an open open Republican, right? Even his TV show, Last Man Standing, the rumor is that Mandy, one of his daughters, after I think she was in maybe the first 3 or 4 seasons, actually decided to leave or wasn't brought back or didn't want to come back because she's like this open liberal, and the chemistry just couldn't be there. There was too much, friction on set, or she just couldn't get behind, the couldn't get behind the aspect of Last Man Standing where there's different political references within there. Especially when Tim Allen would do his vlogs within each episode, and a lot of those had some type of political slant to the right. So politics has taken over social media. It's taken over sports, especially professional sports. It's taken over businesses. Businesses seem like they have to speak out against something, whether or not it has anything to do with their industry. I talked about banking. I gave you that example. It's in Hollywood, TVs, and movies, and our education system. So how did we get here? How did we go from, again, I was born in the 80s. My childhood was the 90s. It was not like this. Earlier than the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, 60s, going back, it was not like this. So how did we allow politics to just permeate everything, to inject itself within everything? Again, and in my opinion, it has not made things better. It's made things worse. So how did we get here? Well, like I said, with social media, you can say within the rules of the platform, you can say anything. So it seems like with social media, because people are hidden behind a screen, or maybe they want to do like a live or record a video and post something. But when it comes to the characters, 140, 160, 240, whatever platform you are on, you can say, just put whatever you want out there, right? And just be confident in it and hit enter, and boom, there it goes. Whether that's on Facebook, Instagram, I'm not sure. I don't think you really do too much on Pinterest, but Twitter and all these other different social media platforms, like you can just post it and boom, it's out there. And you can find like-minded people, so you can be like, oh, well, I know people are going to like this, or, hey, I don't really care what people think. Maybe that's you don't care what people think, and good on you. So you're just going to put whatever your thoughts and opinions are out there, or share whatever you want to share. But then also social media, you can do it instantaneously. But before social media, what do you have to do if you want to communicate with somebody? You could write a letter. You had to walk down to their house. You had to drive to their house. You had to call them on the phone. You had to talk face to face. So maybe you didn't really know the political opinions of your friends or your family or your coworkers or other acquaintances, because there was more effort to communicate with them. And then when you did communicate, you were probably too busy catching up on just normal life. And unless you were having a sit down, face to face, hanging out at their house or meeting for lunch or coffee or dinner, something like that, you probably didn't get into a political discussion. But social media, you can just rapid fire shoot messages back and forth. You can video call someone through, the development of technology and everything else. And it's just, boom, you can communicate so much faster, so much more easily. So I think that's part of it. When politics, there's just more exposure and more ability to get your thoughts and your opinions out there, just because communication is so much faster. And then companies, there's this, I've heard this said by Ben Shapiro a lot. I forget the name that he uses. He wrote about it in one of his more recent books. But the reason why companies, his belief, and I agree with him, are sounding off about things that have nothing to do with them, is because what you'll have media, not social media, but actual media, the journalists, reporters, they will if something happens, culturally, something like cultural, whatever, most recently, the overturning of Roe v. Wade or, something else like that, what they'll do is the media will start calling companies. They don't do just small companies. They go for the big companies, right? They basically just go down there, the Fortune 100 or the Fortune 500 list, and start calling these companies or different sports leagues and what have you, different organizations. And this is what they'll do. They'll call them up, say, hey, yeah, hey, Roe v. Wade was just overturned. What are your thoughts about that? And they're calling like Coke, right? Coca-Cola, or they're calling Amazon, or they're calling Disney, and all these top companies. They're calling some airline, and what they're doing is they are going to continue to call, and they want these companies to be like, well, dang, we gotta say something, because we're just getting all these calls, and yeah, this has nothing to do with anything, but we have employees. And that's like the way these journalists or reporters are trying to tie it in and make it feel like these companies have to say something. It's because like, oh, well, you have Black employees. So what do you think about George Floyd in that case? Oh, well, you have employees who are female, because we can now define a woman, and they could become pregnant and they might possibly consider an abortion. So are you going to pay for your employees, to the women who become pregnant? Let's say they wanted an abortion. Are you going to pay for their travel if they are not located in a state where they can get an abortion? And these companies, they feel like, well, I mean, we got to say something. Otherwise, it's going to look like we're intolerant. And that's the game that is played by these journalists, these reporters. They call up these companies, say, hey, I know you have employees, and yes, this might affect some of your employees. So what is your stance on this? Instead of them saying, like no comment, they're going to provide some type of statement, because they definitely have a diversity, equity, and inclusion department within their company. That's for sure, especially if you're on the Fortune 100 or 500 list. That is for sure, you have that. And these journalists and reporters, they know this. So they're just going to keep asking you until you say something. And so you don't look intolerant or anything like that, or like you are being, prejudiced to one group over another or something like that. You're going to come up and out with a statement and release it. And you're going to err on the side of caution, and you are going to take the advice of your HR department, your legal department. And that's exactly how they do it. So you have companies sounding off on things that have nothing to do with their company, but because they feel the pressure to do so, they end up making a statement about something. And then you're an employee who's like, well, kind of like sitting there in the back of the room, like, hey, I don't agree with that, but I see you've already made a statement before you considered probably the thoughts and the feelings of the other employees who this doesn't really apply to, or don't agree with the stance that you're taking, but okay. And you've seen a couple other companies now, like Netflix, they'll say, and I think Tesla is another one, but they're like, hey, if you don't agree with, or Twitter, since Musk is trying to purchase that, but not pre-Musk, but post-Musk, saying like, hey, if you don't agree with what's going on here, if you're just going to try to be some activist or a social justice warrior about things we do here, content that we create, things that we support, then, you can just go find work elsewhere. But that is few and far between. Most of these companies, these big corporations, they acquiesce to the minority within their company, but it's the loudest voice. And then they end up making some kind of statement. And then it ultimately, over time, it seems to become, well, you go woke and you go broke, because you are going to lose shareholders, which were not consulted or surveyed or anything before these statements are made. And these large corporations, they're publicly traded, like on the New York Stock Exchange or something like that, or NASDAQ, what have you. They owe it to their shareholders to do what is best for their shareholders. And when they don't do that, they lose memberships, they lose viewers, they lose consumers. And then ultimately they are feeling it in the pockets. So these companies are now realizing this and be like, wow, this is actually affecting our bottom line. And they're starting to speak up a little bit, but not enough. And then politicians, how do we get to this level of division within our country? It goes back to politicians. Politicians they always speak in hyperbole, it seems like. They use this language that is meant to stir up your emotions and stir up an emotional response, because if they don't stir up an emotional response, then you might actually think with logic and reason and realize, well, that's not exactly what's happening, or that's not exactly going to be the fallout to what just occurred. But the politicians, they like to use these trigger words, so to speak, be like, oh, well, this is a threat on democracy. Everything is a threat on democracy. And yeah, sure, we locked you down and did these other things, but now that things are opening back up, or we're trying to restore something towards the Constitution, it's a threat on democracy. And you gotta fight to protect this country. Blah, 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 blah. And it's this like insightful language to be like, oh man, yeah, this is a big threat. Yeah, people are in danger. Yeah, women are in danger. Yeah, I hate this, and I'm gonna protest, or I'm going to riot, even though in my state I can go out and do the thing that I am protesting against, which might be outlawed in another state. But for those people, I stand up for them. I stand up for justice and stand against this injustice. And they get you all emotional, because when you're emotional, you're not going to stop and think and be like, wait a second. I'm going to protest or damage something within my own community. Abortion, for an example. You saw this. I'm going to damage these storefronts in a riotous protest against the overturning of Roe v. Wade in New York or in California, where the state's law says that a woman can go get an abortion. Overturning Roe v. Wade has no effect on these women, but I'm going to riot and cause damage to my own community because that's what I need to do, because I don't think with logic or reason. And politicians, in the interest of being reelected, they want to spread this division. They want to spread this division based on identity politics. This affects Blacks. This affects Hispanics. This is, white nationalism. This is replacement theory. This is for poor people. This is, we're trying to get money from the rich, the wealthy. You are poor and a minority. You climb up an extra rung on that victimhood ladder. Oh, and you're part LGBTQ community. Oh, you get to go up another rung. And this is the game that is played. It is this climbing of the ladder of injustice, of victimhood, that a lot of politicians just spew out there because they want the division and they want to make it seem like they are standing up for, in their mind, the least of these in order to get reelected. But they use division, Democrat talking about Republican. Everything Republican does is some type of threat to democracy. Republicans, for the most part, more level-headed. Let's talk about this. Let's have the conversation. Let's use logic and reason. But you don't get that from the other side. Nope. Not unless you're Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, right? Everyone else, it's anything goes. I'm going to say anything and everything to get whatever I need to support me as the politician, right? To support the party, to sow some type of doubt, create some type of anger, some form of distaste, distrust for the other side in order to further the goals of the party and of myself. And also politicians and the government, it's just everything seems to go to the federal level. Our government is set up to where anything that is not at the federal level is enumerated to the states. And it is up to the states and their state governments to set the laws and the rules of their land. But everything seems to be at the federal level. And I think that just again creates this division. Everything that should be like a local and a state issue, the federal level has to sound off. So something that's going on in Florida is you got President Biden talking about it, or something that's going on in Texas or Tennessee or something like that. And you know, oh, what's going on over there? That's not something that should be happening. And it's like, and I mean, this happens not just with the Biden administration. This goes back previous administrations, previous presidencies, but it's like everything has to have a comment from the president of the United States. Hey, do you like what's going on over there? No, I don't. Hey, do you like what's going on over there? No, I don't. And it's just everything gets elevated to this federal level, even though certain things need to be left to the local and state level. Everything is nationalized. Even even elections, right? Campaigns. You have people contributing money, and this gets into campaign finance laws, which I probably should do a future episode on, because there needs to be reform to that. Like why should someone who lives and resides in another state be able to contribute money to an election of a senator or a representative, granted on the federal level, but why should someone in California be able to donate to a race that's going on in Georgia, or someone from New York donate also to that same race? Like, that's one thing I don't understand, but that's where we are. Everything is federal. You can yell across the country, so to speak, about whatever is going on elsewhere. And it just fuels this division. It used to be where if something was going on in the state of Florida, and California probably wouldn't hear about it. Washington State probably wouldn't hear about it. But now, again, social media and technology, you can hear about it and you can say something about it. And it just is more opportunities to create this division. And this division is leading to thoughts of a civil war. Is a civil war something that could be coming about? Could be. Most recent polling shows that 40% of Americans believe that we are on a path to a civil war. I was having a conversation with my neighbor a week ago, just hanging out. The kids were playing, and politics came up. I forget what exactly was said, but, my neighbor's comment was, oh, yeah, if, since we're probably going to head to a civil war, and, maybe the family and they should move to Australia. Now, Australia sounds great. Weather sounds great. You got so much to do there, right? But my neighbor may not have paid too close of attention to what was going on in Australia related to the pandemic and the police state that they had going on over there, which was like a totally different vibe than I expected for Australia. But I mean, that's what their prime minister was about. But yeah, just like 40% of Americans believe that a civil war is likely, that we are headed down that path. So what would a civil war really look like? Can we be friends with one another? I posed this question on social media. I asked the question on TikTok and on Instagram, saying, okay, well, can you be friends with someone that is complete opposite of your political beliefs, of your values, your political values and everything, what you want to see happen and what you want to see the United States of America stand for? Some people said, yes, currently doing that. One of the users was talking, one of the followers of mine mentioned how they are engaged and their fiance has the complete complete opposite, political views as them. One's Republican, one's Democrat, or one's like a liberal Democrat. Like, you get along fine. I was like, how do you do that? Like, oh, well, I guess our love for each other is strong enough, and politics isn't the only thing that we talk about. There are other things to talk about, and so on and so forth. So we make it work. Others are like, I can't make that work, or hey, I tried to make that work for a certain length of time, and then I got cut out, or maybe I cut a friend out. I'm kind of the mindset where, yeah, we can be friends if we avoid the conversation, but I'm willing to have a conversation regarding politics. But then once we talk about whatever issue it is we're talking about, if it looks like there isn't any movement from either one of us, my friend or I, then for me, I don't really want to talk about that subject anymore, because then I'll just be hitting my head against the wall. So eventually, after maybe exhausting the conversation around different stances and ideologies within, the political sphere that I hold and that my friend would hold, I'm just eventually going to want to avoid those conversations. But let it be known that I'm going to be working, in private, behind the scenes, so to speak, silently trying to, further what I believe, and working in opposition to what my friend believes. But again, a lot of people who responded to my videos were saying, I tried to make it work, couldn't make it work. Others were like, yeah, we make it work, we just don't talk about politics. And I'm thinking, well, again, like I just said, yeah, that's probably the route I would take. Once I realize I'm hitting my head up against the wall, I'm going to avoid that conversation. So, the friendship is just going to develop separate from politics. But again, know that I'm going to be working to further what I believe for this country. And that's going to be in opposition to what my friend believes. But 40% of Americans believe that America is heading to a civil war. So what would that look like? What would that look like? Does that mean violence? I don't think so. Our Civil War, right, 160 years ago, was violent. Very, very violent. But I don't think that would occur today. I think what you would see today is people are just going to move to the states that, granted, it could change with your governor and your state legislatures and everything, but they're just going to move to states that they feel like fits their lifestyle, fits their ideologies. Blue states are going to become bluer. Red states are going to become redder. Patriotism, polls show, is split along party lines. Republicans tend to be much more patriotic than Democrats of today. And I believe that shows like the younger the Democrat, the less patriotic. But split along party lines, Republicans more patriotic, Democrats less patriotic. But I don't think there'll be violence. I think people will just move. And I want to show here up on the screen from move.org, and this is using census, United States Census information. But it shows in 2021 that a total of 27.1 million Americans moved, which was about 8.4%, which is lower than in most years, most decades. But I mean, again, we're still in the pandemic and everything else, so that's probably why that number is lower. But 27.1 million Americans, and that includes like the individuals within households. Notice here on this graphic, people's primary motivations for moving. 34% family reasons, marriage, relatives. 20% moved for lifestyle preferences. 26% moved for career reasons. 20% for economic reasons. A lot of those can change, right? But there are certain states where, the economy is better, or maybe taxes are higher or taxes are lower. State income tax, no state income tax, lifestyle preferences. We saw a lot of that going on with the response to COVID, to the pandemic. However, look at the secondary reasons. The secondary reasons for moving kind of speak a little more to how people were feeling in 2021. 39% cited political reasons as a secondary reason. 37% cited lower taxes. 38, climate change. I guess gets too hot, too cold. Eventually people move down to Florida. That's the joke I make, right? If you move down to Florida because of the pandemic, you just sped up your own timeline, because if you move from the Northeast, you're probably going to wind up here anyway. 45% cited lower living costs, and 43% said a better culture. And that gets to what I believe is going to happen, or I think supports what I believe is going to happen. States right now that are blue are just going to become more blue. California, New York, Illinois, going to become more blue. Red states are going to just become more and more red. I don't really know. There may be some purple states. Maybe. But I'm not entirely sure. I just think if a blue state fits your lifestyle and how you want to live and what you believe, that's where you're going to go. Red state, the same. So we're going to have these dark reds and these dark blues. And I think that's what we're going to see with this civil war. And then you'll have states become more distinct if it kind of follows along the political ideologies, the platforms of the Democrat Party and the Republican Party as they are today. So going back to my original question and the title of this episode, will America be able to survive today's political climate? Can America survive the bluer blue states, the redder red states? I think so. I hope so. I don't want to see any type of destruction of America. I think the framework of America, our Constitution, would allow states to become more blue and states to become more red and still function as the United States of America. But let me know what you think. Do you believe that we are going to see bluer blue and redder red? And if we do see that, do you believe that we will be able to function as the United States of America? We need to heal, that we need to the left needs to come back to the center. They have become way, way too radical, way too progressive. The fundamental flaw of progressivism, today's progressivism, is revealed each and every single day from the progressive left. They need to come back to the center. We need to grow in our shared patriotism for our country. When it is the 4th of July, our Independence Day, we should not be scrolling through your social media accounts and coming across people who are like, yeah, I'm not celebrating today because of X, Y, and Z. It should be, yes, we are America. Yes, we are great. Yes, we have done great things. Yes, we have done bad things, not so great things. But what America stands for, we should be celebrating. The independence that we have, we should be celebrating. I desperately hope that the patriotism within this country is not split up across party lines, that we will come together in our patriotism, and through that patriotism, work to actually improve America to be a better place and not head towards a civil war. Hi, I'm Brian Kletter, the creator and host of the Counterthought Podcast. Thank you for watching this video. Remember to like it, and then also check out these 2 videos and subscribe to the channel. For more daily content from me, you can find me on Instagram at CounterThoughtCEO and the official Counterthought Instagram page at counter_thought. Thank you for watching, and spread the word.